Have you ever found yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone or, grabbing just one more chip and then another and another? But when it comes to, say, starting a new workout, it feels like pushing a boulder uphill. Well, today, we're going to get into the science of why that is, using the brilliant ideas from James Clear's Atomic Habits. We're going to figure out why some things are just so hard to resist and, more importantly, how we can actually steal that power to make our good habits just as addictive. All right, let's get into it.
I mean, this is the big question, right? We all have things we wish we could do more of, and things we wish we could do less of. So, what's the deal? Why does certain behaviors just lock into our brains and become second nature, while others feel like a total battle of willpower every single time? You might think it's a personal failing, but the answer is actually rooted in some pretty wild science.
You heard that right, a seagull. To really understand our modern-day cravings, for things like junk food or social media, we've got to go back in time, all the way to the 1940s, and look at some very confused birds. I know, it sounds a little weird, but trust me, this is where the puzzle pieces start to click into place.
Okay, so first things first, we need to understand the kind of factory settings that are pre-programmed into our brains. And we're going to see how some really simple, almost goofy animal instincts actually pull back the curtain on what truly motivates us as people.
So, there was this scientist, Nico Tinbergen, and he noticed that baby seagulls peck at a little red dot on their mom's beak to get food. Pretty normal. So he decided to experiment. He showed them a fake cardboard beak with a red dot. And yep, they pecked at it. But then he made a fake beak with 3 huge red dots. And the chicks? They went absolutely bananas for it. They preferred this ridiculous fake beak over their own mother. He saw the same thing with geese. A goose will instinctively roll its egg back into the nest. But when Tinbergen offered it a volleyball, the goose would ignore its own egg and desperately try to roll this giant ball into its nest instead. It was following a simple primal rule: bigger is better.
What Tinbergen stumbled upon is something we now call a supernormal stimulus. It's basically a souped-up, exaggerated version of reality that our brain responds to even more strongly than the real thing. It's like a cheat code for our instincts. It's so perfectly optimized, so over the top, that the brain just can't help itself. It chooses the fake over the real every time. And this is where it gets really interesting for us. For that baby seagull, the supernormal stimulus was just a big red dot on some cardboard. For you and me, it's the scientifically engineered bliss point of a potato chip, that perfect, irresistible trio of salt, sugar, and fat that our ancient survival brains are hardwired to go crazy for. And you see these things everywhere once you start looking. Food scientists create something called dynamic contrast. Think about the crunch of a cookie and the smooth cream inside. It keeps your brain from getting bored. Social media gives us this endless waterfall of praise and likes, way more than we'd ever get in a normal day. And of course, advertisements use these impossibly perfect photoshopped images to sell us stuff. They are all just heightened, exaggerated versions of reality, designed to push our evolutionary buttons. So we get what these triggers are now, but why are they so powerful? What is actually happening inside our heads? To answer that, we have to look at the brain's master motivation chemical, dopamine. And this is where we learn the fascinating secret that wanting something is way, way more powerful than actually liking it. Our understanding of this stuff didn't happen overnight. It started with Tinbergen just watching some birds. Then, in 1954, a groundbreaking experiment with rats just blew the doors off everything we thought we knew about motivation. And now, today, we know that all our habits, the good ones and the bad ones, are basically run by this thing called a dopamine-driven feedback loop. That 1954 experiment, it was wild. Scientists figured out how to block the release of dopamine in the brains of rats, and the results were just staggering. The rats basically lost their will to live. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't drink, they wouldn't do anything. They just sat there. But here's the crucial part. They could still feel pleasure. If you put sugar water directly in their mouths, they'd enjoy it. They just didn't want it anymore. Without dopamine, desire completely vanished. And without desire, all action just stopped. And that leads us right to this key insight, which James Clear puts perfectly. It is the anticipation of a reward, not the fulfillment of it, that gets us to take action. See, dopamine isn't really the pleasure chemical. It's the motivation chemical. Think about it. A gambler gets that rush of dopamine before they place the bet, not necessarily after they win. It's that feeling of anticipation, that what if, that craving for what might happen, that actually pushes us to do things. And our brains are literally built for this. It turns out, We have way more neural circuits dedicated to wanting rewards than we do for actually liking them. Desire is the engine. The wanting part is what drives almost all of our behavior. We're always chasing the promise of a reward.
Okay, so this is all fascinating, but what do we do with this information? If our brains are hardwired to chase the anticipation of a reward, how can we use that to our advantage? Well, that brings us to a really clever and powerful strategy called temptation bundling.
And there's a perfect story for this. There was an engineering student named Ronan Byrne. He loved watching Netflix, but he also knew he really needed to exercise more. So what did he do? He hacked his stationary bike. He wrote a little program so that Netflix would only play on his laptop if he was cycling at a certain speed. The second he slowed down, his show would pause. He brilliantly connected something he wanted to do, binge watch shows, with something he needed to do, work out.
And that, right there, is the heart of temptation bundling. It's a strategy where you pair an action you're already drawn to with an action that you need to do but maybe don't love. There's a formal name for this in psychology. It's called Premack's principle. But really, it's just a fancy way of saying you can use a fun behavior to get yourself to do a not-so-fun one. The rule is simple. You only get to do the thing you want after you do the thing you need.
And this isn't just some little life hack. Huge companies use this stuff on a massive scale. Think about ABC's whole Thank God It's Thursday campaign. They didn't just advertise their shows. No, they advertised the whole experience. They told you to watch their shows while you drink red wine and eat popcorn. They bundled what they needed you to do, watch TV, with what you already wanted to do, which was relax and treat yourself. The shows themselves became linked to that amazing feeling of reward.
All right, let's bring this all home and make it super practical. We can actually combine temptation bundling with another technique called habit stacking to create a really simple but incredibly powerful formula you can use for pretty much any habit you want to build.
Here's what it looks like. It's a simple two-step rule. First, you say, after my current habit, I will do the habit I need. That's habit stacking. It gives your new habit a clear trigger. Then you add the magic. After my habit I need, I will do the habit I want. That second part is the temptation bundle. It's the reward your brain will start to crave.
Okay, let's walk through an example. Let's say you love to read the news first thing in the morning. That's the want. But you know you should practice gratitude. That's the need. Using the formula, it would be, after I get my morning coffee, I will say one thing I'm grateful for. After I say that one thing, I will read the news. See? You're using your desire to check the news as bait to get the gratitude practice done.
Here's another one, a really common one. You want to check social media, but you know you need to move your body more. The rule becomes, after I pull out my phone, I will do 10 burpees. After I do 10 burpees, I will check Facebook. You've just transformed the cue for a potentially bad habit into a trigger for a really good one, all by dangling that reward at the end.
And here is the truly cool part. If you stick with this, something amazing starts to happen in your brain. It begins to associate the need habit, doing the burpees, practicing gratitude, with that little dopamine hit of anticipating the reward. You'll eventually find yourself actually looking forward to doing the hard part because you know it's your ticket to getting the thing you really want.
So, to wrap this all up in a nutshell, our brains are suckers for exaggerated supernormal stimuli. The thing that actually gets us off the couch and moving isn't pleasure itself, but the anticipation of it. That's dopamine working its magic. And we can totally hijack this system with temptation bundling by pairing something we want to do with something we need to do to make any habit feel irresistible.
So now it's over to you. Think about that one habit you've been trying to build, the one that always feels like a chore. How can you bundle it with something you already love to do? What habit are you going to make irresistible?